they go. Claudio Herger leading away. Oh, Max Smith-Hilliard stopped on the grid, and into the lead goes Claudio Herger. Really good start from her.
There's Marino with his crash helmet.
I raced since I was a kid in karting, and then into a little bit of single-seaters, but then mostly sports cars, Sebring, Daytona, Le Mans, all that stuff, and now I just really race old cars for fun. Been owned and raced by my father-in-law Nick Mason for a long, long time. You know, he bought it in a state of one of those ones where they're like, it just needs put back together, and it was a long project. He spent a lot of time and money putting it back together and then raced it successfully for a long time. But I think it was originally one of the V12 cars, and then was put back to the 6-cylinder, and it's there's all this conjecture whether it was one of the factory cars at one point that Fangio drove and everything else. He wanted me to drive it for a long time, but it has no seat belts. We run it as it raced in 57. And it was just a bit like, oh, nah, it's okay. I don't want to do that. And eventually he's like, I really like you just to test it. And he knew what would happen. The first lap I was completely addicted. And it's just the most perfect car. The balance, the way that it communicates with the driver, it just, yeah, it's driving perfection for me. It took a while to get the feeling for it. Obviously, coming from like Formula Ford 1600, I had a rough idea. But running on the old Dunlop tyres especially is a special kind of lack of grip, and also being a cross-ply, the way that you can slide it is very different than what we have in the modern tyre. And it really, I wouldn't say I was very good in historic cars until I drove the 250F. That really helped me, it like guided me on what these cars wanted, what the tyres wanted, and it's made me better in all the other old cars since. It's so tractable. It's way more power than the tyre can take, and you're just really, you rotate the car before you're at the corner, and then you're just playing with the throttle, and it just allows you to be so precise. There's no like little feathers or fumbles, and you know, you rip it all the way to 8,000 RPM. It just sounds incredible. That exhaust right next to your ear. I can't pick one thing that I love about it, because it's the way it all comes together in a package. I mean, I love the way it looks, first of all. You walk up to it, it's beautiful. And the way that it makes the driver feel is what makes it so special. I've been lucky to drive cars from like, you know, 1901 all the way up to very modern race cars. And it's just the pure thing of driving a car and your connection with it, and it just makes you feel like a superstar, a superhero. It's just perfection. It's weird. You know, it has the drum brakes and everything, so you have to manage that, and that should be a negative, but it's not, because it's so in keeping with the car. You leave the pits and you brake. Before they're warm, it pulls every single way, it tries to pull you off the track. They take a while on this car. Each one they're hydraulic, but each one's adjustable, and when they're not right, it pulls one way or the other, and then you have to spend quite a bit of time just getting all dialed in. The first time I raced it at Goodwood, the first few laps, I was pushing it quite hard, just not knowing what the car needed. And there was two things. First of all, you can see why Fangio was so successful, because he was a big guy, and it needs a lot of, especially without the seat belts, you use your knees to hold you in, and it's so physical to drive. And while it's open, and it's got this little flap in the front, there's no airflow. It's so hot inside the car as the heat from the engine and everything comes back through your feet, and it's yeah, it's just a really, really physical thing to drive. And the brakes, when you push it hard, like around Goodwood, even around Goodwood where you have the longer straights, if you do it for more than a few laps, it just doesn't like it, and they start to fade a little bit. But that's part of the joy of driving it, is balancing all of that. How do you get the most out of it without going too far? And it gives you even more respect for these guys racing for 3 hours in these things. You feel very exposed. I mean, I don't think you can think about it, because you're not then focusing on what you should be. It's definitely something you have to ask yourself. You have to say, am I prepared for the risk of doing this? A couple of things. It looks terrible with the roll hoop on. Also, I see racing some of the guys that have roll hoops on, they seem to think it gives them some kind of invincibility. But you're still driving a 1950s car, and it's still attached to a 1950s chassis. And I just think it gives you, for me, it gives me the same experience that Moss and Fangio and all those amazing drivers had around here, but also keeps me grounded to what this car is. We drove it here a couple of years ago. It was my first time here, first time the 250F here. We didn't have the right gearing, so it was a bit of a handful, and it broke like 2 laps into the race, so I didn't really get the full experience. But just that moment of driving out the pit lane and driving around this track is incredible. And the moment for me is sitting on the grid and looking down that famous start and finish straight, and it gives you goosebumps. It wants to be in the fast open corners of Goodwood. It doesn't want to be in the tight confines of here. But the problem last time was the gearing being wrong. You couldn't manipulate the car. Hopefully we've got it right this time and it's a bit more in its sweet spot, but we'll see. But it's never going to be as good as some of the smaller, later front engine cars.
That's Marino. He crossed the line. He'll be delighted with
I
that.
think the first place I raced it was Silverstone, because in my mind, wide open spaces was a good place to start. But even before I raced it at Silverstone, we'd already entered it at Goodwood, and I do race it mostly at Goodwood. I have this incredible picture. I said to my wife, I said, anything ever happens to me, this is a picture I want them to use, and I think it's coming into the first corner at Goodwood. And I'm miles from the apex, and all 4 wheels are sliding, and it's just like that's what the car does, and that's how it feels, and it just flows so beautifully. Chicane aside, there's not many heavy braking areas, and it's just, I guess it's a sense of euphoria. It's like you talk about the no seat belts. While I would never not want to have the safety that we have these days, the opportunity to experience that and what the drivers did to a degree back in the 50s, really, it's a more intense feeling than you have now, because you have this in the back of, you do have in the back of your mind a little bit when it starts to go wrong in any way, how exposed you are. And that's like an extra level of adrenaline, I think. And Goodwood, the racing's always fierce, especially in TT and St Mary's and stuff, but when I'm driving that there, I just try and find my own piece of track and stay away from everyone and just enjoy it, because that's what it is for me. It's about my enjoyment of the car, but even more so allowing the fans and everyone else to see it.